Alright guys, welcome back. In this session, we'll explore the VBA object model and the properties and methods associated to the various different objects in VBA. Okay. Before I even begin, I want you to keep this in the back of your mind. There are three main objects in VBA that we work on 95% of the time. They are the workbook, the worksheet, and range. Keep that in mind. Okay. So these are the three objects that you are more likely to be working with more often than times. Okay. However, there are also many various different types of objects in VBA, as you could see on this hierarchical diagram. Okay. So this is how the diagram, the hierarchy of order. Okay. Basically, application, the workbook object sits on the top, and then underneath the workbook you have the worksheet object. All right. This is the second level. Okay. So you have the workbook dot worksheet dot range on the third level. Okay, remember the three that I mentioned: workbook, worksheet, and range. Okay, keep that in the back of your mind for now. Okay, don't worry about the rest yet. So you gotta remember that when you're referring to an object, so if you're gonna refer to an object, you have to refer by the workbook name, the worksheet name, and the range. And finally, the cells, the value in the cells. Okay, so if I want to get the value of cell A2 on a different workbook, and that workbook is named workbook 2, right? Book 2. So I'm going to say workbooks book 2 dot worksheets, the sheet name, the tab name, and the range A5 dot value. Okay, so this is a generic example of how we use the object model. Okay, in VBA. All right. So, but there are cases where you may negate the hierarchical order. Okay, for example, if I'm referring to a cell, where my code is being written, I don't have to go through the hierarchical order. I can just refer to the code name. So the code name of the sheet, and then I can just say it's sheet1 dot range A1, whatever the value is. Okay, so that's one way where we can bypass the hierarchical order of the objects. Okay, but if you are referring to a range or value from another workbook outside where your code was written, remember you have to use the hierarchical order of it. Okay, the workbook name have to be referenced, the worksheet name, which is the tab name, not the code name, and then you have the range address. Okay, so you also got to remember that every object has properties. A property can be thought as a setting for an object, right? So for example, the range object, right, the one that I told you, has properties such as value and address. Workbook has properties of name. Chart objects, right, has properties such as title, grid line, and legend. Okay, you can use VBA to determine object properties and also to change them. Okay, we'll go through that. Okay, some properties are read-only properties, others are read and write. Okay, so some properties you cannot change them, right? You're not able to amend them. Some properties you can amend them, right? These are the write properties. Okay, some only read-only properties. Okay, you refer to the properties by combining object with a property. Okay, so I have the property. Okay, and then I have the object, and then I have the property. Separate them by dot. Okay, we'll go through a lot of examples. Okay, and then besides properties, we also have methods. Object also have methods. Example of methods: clear, cut, copy, paste, delete, protect. Okay, we'll go through all of that. Object library can be accessed on the VBA using the shortcut F2. Okay, so now if I go to my VBA editor, if I want to access the object library, what I have to do is I can either hit F2, and it brings me to the library collection. Okay, so if I go to the Excel library, I want to see the associated property with the worksheet, right? So I'm just going to look for the worksheet here. And I have the associated methods and properties for the worksheet. You can see them right here. Okay. Okay. So you can click on it and see, right? This is a method, right? This is a property, right? This is a this is a property. Okay. Copy. Okay. So that's one way to access the VBA object library. Remember this thing. Okay. So another way is you can use the shortcut F2. Okay, if you hit F2, get the same thing. You want to get out of it, just click on the sheet, the workbook, and you're out of the object library. Okay, so now we're gonna insert our module. Okay, what's a module? A module is where you write your procedures or your codes. Okay, so the way to insert a module is I'm going to go insert and I've inserted a module. Okay, so the module is a container that holds your codes. So you can name your module or the container. I'm just going to say object. Okay, no space whatsoever, right? So don't keep it simple. So if you have multiple modules, you can name them accordingly. I also have to inform you that a module can contain different procedures. Okay, procedures are basically where you write your codes in. So the macro. So if I have a macro, I have a procedure. That procedure, if I go to the Visual Basic application and then I want to run my macro, you see the procedure name. You see the procedure name on the pop-up here. Okay, so that's a procedure. You can have multiple procedures in a module. Okay, so how do we insert procedures? There are two ways. You go insert, once you make sure you are inside the module, and then you can go and just insert procedure. Okay, don't worry about the public private. It will go into the procedural scoping later on. Okay, then you also have functions, then the sub. The one I'm really concerned about now is the sub. Then I'm going to say object oriented. I'm just going to name it the way that I recognize the procedure. Okay, so now I have a procedure. If I close this, I go to my macro, you see I have this procedure displayed on the pop-up. Okay, you can run the procedure, you can write your codes, whatever. Okay, we'll see. We will go into all the different ways of writing codes down the road. Okay, don't worry about that. Now we're just going to concern with the VBA object model. Okay, so that's one way to write your code. So by default, procedures are public. So even if you remove the public, the procedure is still public. Okay, but a private procedure, you have to have the word private in front of it. For a public, you have the liberty of removing the public, the word public. Okay, so that's one way to write procedure. You can also just write it like that. Not a problem at all. Okay, not a problem at all. So just gonna have the two brackets, and that's all. Have a procedure. Now we're gonna just do something with the procedure. Obtaining this workbook name. Debug.print this workbook.name. Okay, this workbook. Now there are two ways to run this procedure. Number one, I can hit F5. Basically, it goes from the start all the way to the end. So I hit F5 and I see the results returning on the immediate video. Make sure you have the VBA editor set up the way that I have it. Okay, we have gone through a lecture on how to set up the VBA editor, so make sure you have it set up the way that it is. So book one. So the second way is you can step into the code and hit F8. So you're stepping into every line. Okay, you're stepping into every line. Okay, so we have obtained the workbook name. So this is how you get the workbook name. Next thing is obtaining range address of a particular cell. Okay, so I want to get the range address of a particular cell. Let's go to our workbook. Okay, our workbook is entirely empty, so I'm just gonna put some values in it. Right, I'm just gonna say D2 to D5 has the value 20. Okay, and then A1 has the value 5. Okay, so I'm just gonna name this range, okay, as just maybe definition. Okay, so I've named it. So this range here is now D2. Now D2 to F5 is also referred to as the range definition. Okay, so there are two ways to call this range on VBA. You can refer it to by the range name that you have assigned. Also you can refer it to the address range, which is D2 to F5. Okay, so let's do the first thing. Okay, let's get the address of some range. Okay, sheet1 dot range. I'm just gonna say some range. Okay, A2 to A4. Okay, dot address. Now what do you think we're gonna get? Okay, so I can hit F8. Okay, and then I don't need this. I know this book one is just from that debug.print. And now I see I have A2 to A4. Okay, so we can also get the address of the range that we have assigned earlier, right? Sheet1 dot range definition dot address. Okay, so now what if you don't want to be running the code all over again, right? Like you don't want to have to be when you write a code, right? That you don't want to go through this line of having to step into this line. You want to run a code and directly reach this point. What you can do is insert a breakpoint. To insert a breakpoint, I can hit F9. Then I can run the code. When I run the code, it's going to stop at the breakpoint. Okay, it's going to stop at the breakpoint. It's going to jump directly to the to where you have the breakpoint. So you don't have to step into every line, and have to reach to the point that you desire. You can jump right to the point that you want. So I'm going to just hit F5. So it's jumped to the breakpoint. And I can just remove whatever it is that I don't want, and then I want to see the results. So it's passed. Now it's on the breakpoint. I hit F8, and you see we have the range address that we have named. Okay, so we're pretty much done with the range address of a particular cell. Okay, so the range, property, address, workbook, property, name. So this is just some example. Okay, some example. Okay, now what if I don't want this pound sign in front of it? Okay, I want the address to be just displaying as D2 to F5. Okay, there is a way to do it. Okay, I'm just going to say return the address on relative form. Okay, I'm just going to say debug.print sheet1.range A2 to A4 dot address. Okay, we have this exact same thing as we wrote above. Now 0, 0. And then once again, I don't want to be stepping into every line of the code, so I'm just going to set a breakpoint here. F9, and then I'm going to jump right to the code. Okay, so I'm just going to remove all this because we weren't interested in this one. Now if I hit F8, step into the line, I'm seeing that now the absolute pound sign has been removed. Okay, alright, so now I want to move to the second part. Okay, based on what we have written here. Now I said sheet 1. What is the sheet 1? Okay, the sheet 1, is it this name that I'm referring to? No, I'm not referring to this tag name. Okay, I'm referring to sheet 1 by the code name. So you have the code name. Okay, you have the code name and the tag name. So I'm referring it to code name because whenever I refer to a worksheet, okay, the worksheet where my code resides in, okay, so in this example, my worksheet is in book 1 and my code is written in book 1, right? So the worksheet I'm referring to is on the same workbook where my code is written. Therefore, I can use the code name. Keep this in mind. I am referring to the code name because my code and worksheet are on the same workbook. Okay, so this is why I'm referring to the code name. But I cannot refer to the code name when my code and worksheet are not on the same workbook. Okay, this is a very important thing. Okay, basically, if I want to refer to a range that sits on a different workbook, then I have to use this convention. Okay, we'll go through that all in the future, right? But it's just a preview. Workbooks and the workbook name, okay, with the extension, and then you have the worksheets, and then you have the tab name of the sheet. Okay, have to remember this. Okay, you've got to remember this. If the code that you're writing, okay, if the code that you are writing is on the same workbook where the sheet on the same workbook with the worksheet, then you can use the code name. Okay, I've used sheet 1 because sheet 1 is on the same workbook where my code is written. But if the worksheet is on a different workbook, you must use this. You must invoke the hierarchical order. Basically, the workbooks, whatever the name, the tab name of the sheet. So now I can just refer to the code name. Okay, that's about it. Now let's move on to cells. Okay, I can just do something like debug.print okay, I just can say sheet 1 dot range. I'm just gonna do something with the cells. Range A1 dot value. So we have some values in it just now, right? Okay, so now I can just copy this and I can also paste it into the immediate window to get the results. right? That's one way for me to get access directly to the results. I can also do the same thing. Instead of running the code, I can just Control V and run it. I get the results. Okay, but you have to make sure that if you're making some declarations like dim, set, and all that, then it has to run the line of the code. Okay, we don't worry about that too much. But I'm just showing you the two different ways, right, where you can get the associated values of the properties. Okay, of the object that you want interested. Okay, so this is how you do something with the range. Okay, range value. Okay, I also can get the sheet name. Okay, basically I can get the tab name of the sheet. So for example, I can also just say debug.print sheet1.name. Now I'm going to change the sheet name to be something that we can recognize. I'm just going to say object. That's all. This is the tab name. Tab name is object, code name is sheet. So I can copy this. I can run it. You see, I'm getting the tab name. I can also just get the results by running onto the code. So I'm going to set a breakpoint, and then I'm going to run the code. I'm just going to remove all this because I don't want that. And I can just hit F8 again. See, I'm getting the same results. Okay, so there's two ways you can do it. You choose whatever that you want, whatever that fits you, right? A preference. Now let's do something with the property of cells. Okay, let's do something with the interior color. If I want to get, I'm just gonna highlight this in green. Okay, A1 is highlighted in green, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say debug.print sheet1.range A1.interior color. I want to get the interior color, basically the cell that I've highlighted. Okay, so if I can run the code, I can just paste it here. Okay, I'm getting the color code for the green. Okay, that's one way for you to do it, to get the interior color. Okay, we can also debug.print sheet1. I'm using the code name. Keep that in mind. Okay, range A1. I can also maybe do something with the font color. I know I can get the font color associated. Okay, the font color is just going to be black, because we know that. So again, just Control V. Okay, 0 is just black. Okay, I can also get this font size. So I can just say sheet1. Make sure you use the leverage of IntelliSense. Okay, you have to use the leverage on IntelliSense. So you can just, when you have IntelliSense, you can just hit the down arrow, and then if you reach the point that the IntelliSense properties or methods that you want, then you hit Control and Enter to select that. Okay, so if I want rows, I hit Control Enter. You see, I have the rows highlighted, and rows is in it, right? Rows is in the code. So now I don't want rows. What I want is the font size. Sheet1 dot font, sheet1 dot range, and then A1 dot font, and then dot. Make sure you leverage on IntelliSense. Okay, see, I've seen size, Control Enter. Okay, so if I just copy this and I paste it, the font size is 11, right? Okay, so the font size is 11, right? You can just go and see, right? The font size is 11. Now I can also get the font name, right? What's the font name that we're using? For that, I believe we have to do something like sheet1 dot range A1 dot font dot name. Yeah, that's the one. So I'm just gonna copy this, paste it into the immediate window because I find it to be more convenient, and then enter. So I have the font name. I've chosen arrow. Okay. So now we have retrieved the properties of the cell. What do you want to reassign? Okay. Maybe I want to reassign the property. What I can do is I can just change the color. Right. Let's change the color. Debug. No, not debug. I'm going to say sheet1, the code name, remember, because it sits on the same workbook where the code is written. Okay, emphasizing this because this is important. Range A1 dot interior dot color equals to VBA dot VB yellow. Just now we had green, so now we're just going to change it to yellow, right? So you can either run the code from here when you want to reassign property, or I think you can also just copy and paste into the immediate window. Let's see if it works if you copy and paste into the immediate window. Yeah, it is working. So you can do that. Yeah, you can also reassign property by just copying and pasting into the immediate window. It's the same thing. So choose whatever you want. Code name again. Sheet1 dot range A1 dot font. I want to change the font name, so I'm just gonna change it to I think Arial. I don't know. Yeah, Arial's okay. And then we can just, now I'm not gonna use the immediate window. I'm gonna change it from here. So I'm just gonna run the code. Okay, so you see everything is run because you run the thing, so line goes through everything. Okay, so that's why if you want to reach it, you're interested in a specific line of code, you set a breakpoint, and you run the thing, then you remove whatever is in the immediate window, and then you can just run step into the line, and you can basically isolate the code. All right, you can isolate the line of the code that you're interested in. Okay, so I've changed this font to Arial because it has run. Okay, now the font should be Arial. Yeah, the font is Arial for A1. Okay, this one is all still in Aptos. Okay, so we have seen that. Can we change the font size? Okay, once again, sheet1 dot range A1 dot font dot size equals to 15, and I'm gonna run that again. Just gonna run that. So it's run. I'm going to see I'm getting size 15. Okay, so we can also reassign properties on the code, on the properties in the VBA editor. Okay, we can reassign properties there. Okay, now let's try to do something with protecting and unprotecting sheet. Okay, protect and unprotect sheet. How am I going to do that? Right, I can just say sheet1 dot protect. I use the word protect. Okay, that's one of the method, I believe. Okay, so I'm just going to protect with the password. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this thing and paste it into the immediate window because we know that it works that way as well. So I've done that. Now I'm trying to make some changes. It's protected. It's protected. Okay, now if I want to unprotect it, I'm just going to go sheet1 dot unprotect password. Okay, so now it's unprotected. If I go and copy it, I'm going to remove all this because it's getting in the way, it's distracting me. Now run it. It's been unprotected. Okay, so now I could type into it. Okay, so we have seen how we can protect and unprotect sheets. So let's talk about offset and resize. Okay, something that you should be familiar with. Okay, so what is offset? What is offset? Okay, let's just go through this. Debug. I'm just going to say debug.print sheet1. That's the code name. Okay, not the tab name. Dot range A1 to A12. Okay, now I'm going to offset this by 20 dot address. So offset is basically when you shift the range of the cell to either down. So the first argument here is how many rows are you going down and how many columns are you going. Okay, so it can be negative as well. In this case, it's a positive. I'm moving 2 rows. I'm offsetting 2 rows down. Okay, so if I just run this, I'm going to copy, paste it into the immediate window. I run it. You see, I'm on A3 to A14. Initially, I was on A1 to A12. Right? I was on A1 to A12. So I'm just gonna highlight it. Okay. I was just gonna, yeah, it's okay. All right, I'm just gonna have a table around it. So A1, I'm moving 2, right? So now 1, 2. So now it's going 2, and it's taking basically 14. Okay, it has moved 1, 2. That's why it's gone to A3. Okay, right? And we also can do resize. Okay, print. I can say something like sheet1 dot range A1, we can use the same range, not a problem. Dot resize, and I can say I want to resize 1 dot address. Okay, what do you think this is going to happen is now the range A1 to A12. I'm resizing it to 3 rows. Okay, I'm resizing it to 3 rows. Okay, and 1 column. Okay, so I expect to get A1 to A3. Okay, so let's just Control C this, Control V, dot resize. I'll see whether sheet 1 range. Hang on a second. I believe there was a typo, right? Address S should be double S there. So now if I run the thing, A1 to A3, yeah? So be careful, right? I had to put address as SS, okay? So now we've gone through offset and resize. Let's talk about rows and columns dot count. Let's see what it does, okay? So I can just say debug dot print, use a code name sheet1 dot range. And what was the range that we're interested in? We're going to go for this range right here. Okay. Definition. We have named it definition, so I can just use the range name definition. Okay. And then what I'm going to say is dot rows dot count. Okay. What do you think this is going to give us? It's giving us 4. Why is it giving us 4? Because it's the number of rows in this range. Okay, the number of rows in this range. Likewise, I could copy this, Control C, Control V, and change it to columns. Columns.count. I can copy this and just paste it into the immediate window because that will be more convenient. I run it, 3 columns, right? So we have 3 columns in this range, right? D, E, and F. So we've gone through that, okay? Now, let's do row and column, right? Before I forget that, row and column. What does row and column do, right? So the row and column basically is I have debug.print sheet1.range. Then I have A5. Okay, this is just some random value, and I'm going to say row. Okay, if I just going to delete this immediate window, copy this, and I paste it into the immediate window. We are on row 5. It's giving the row and column position of cell. Okay. If I do now the same thing, I want to get the corresponding column, so I'm going to use dot column, singular. Okay, not columns, use column. Okay, we'll go into rows and columns, the plural version later. Okay, in upcoming lectures. Now we're going to concern about row and column. Okay, positioning. Control C, Control V. I'm on column 1. A translates to column 1, right? B is column 2, etc. So what if I have not a single range? I have a multiple range. I try to do something like this: debug.print sheet1.range A5 to D20.row. Okay, I want to see what I know what it's going to return. Okay, but I'm going to prove to you that it's going to return 5. It's not going to return 20. Okay, because A5 to D20, it's taking the first one. Okay, the one on the left. Okay, basically A5 to 20, the first one on the left. Okay, the first cell address on the left, right? A5 to D20. Okay, A5 to D20, first one on the left. So the position is row 5. Likewise, if I do the same for column, I replace this with column, and I copy and I paste it. It's not going to give me 4. It's going to give me 1, right? It's not going to give me the position of D, right? The one on the left. Keep that in mind. Okay, keep that in mind. So we can also, instead of referring to range by range A, and basically the A number convention, right? Here this can say A20. we can also use the cells method, the cells referencing. Basically, the cells have the row number. You can refer to the row number and the column number. Okay, this is one way for you to do it, to reference cells. Okay, for example, I can say debug dot print. I can say sheet 1. Sheet 1 is the code name. Why am I using the code name? Because the worksheet is on the same workbook where my module macro was written. So I'm just going to say for 2. It's entirely random. Okay, and I'm just going to get the address. And then I'm just going to copy, paste it. So the 4th row, 2nd column, I run it. B is the 2nd column, right? 4 is the 4th row. I can just 0, 0 because I don't want to have that. I don't want to have that pound sign. So Control C, Control V. Now have B4. Okay. So we can also clear cells, right? Method such as clearing cells. Okay. So for example, I'm going to use the code name again. Sheet 1 dot range D1. Well, let's clear some, D1 to D4 dot clear. Okay, but before I run it, I'm going to make sure that I have some value on D1 to D4, right? Okay, I have some value. Oh no, I don't have any value. So D1, I have value on D2. So, but it's clashing with the range, right? It's clashing with the range. Maybe we can have something that doesn't clash with the range, right? Because I'm going to share this workbook, so I don't want to confuse anyone, right? So I'm just going to say I'm going to say H1 to H5. Okay, I'm just going to put some value 20. See, so Control Enter. H1 to H5 is 20. Now H1 to H5 dot clear. Okay, so if I run it, okay, I'm also before I clear it, I'm also just going to have a table because I want to show you something as well. So H1 to H5. Now I go to the Visual Basic application. I run the thing. Control C, Control V. So it's been cleared. It's been cleared. Now H1 to H5, it's been cleared. But the table has been cleared as well. Right? So there are instances when you want to clear, you don't want to clear the formatting. Right? You don't want to clear the formatting. So that's why we can use clear. Instead of saying clear, you can say clear contents. Right? I use this a lot, right? Sometimes when I'm populating entries into table, I want to clear the table, but I don't want to clear the outline. Okay, I don't want to clear the outline. Now if I just copy and paste it H1 to H5, now the outline for the table is there. Okay, so clear and clear content, something you must be aware of. We can also copy values, right? We can copy values. For example, I'm on sheet 1. I'm just going to add another sheet because, never mind, we're just going to copy it on the same sheet first. I'm going to copy A1 value to, I'm going to say sheet 1 dot range A1 dot copy. So when you see copy, Control Enter. Okay, and then what am I copying? Where am I copying it to? I'm also copying it to sheet 1 dot range. I'll just have K1, right? Make sure that the value is not being filled. That's why I've chosen the range that is far away. Okay, so Control C, Control V, and I'm going to see K1 now. K1 has the value 5. Okay, right? Then we can also copy to another sheet. Okay, it's going to copy to sheet 2. So sheet 1 dot range A1 dot copy to sheet 2. So the sheet 2 is the code name. Yeah, we're using the code name because same workbook where the work module was written. Okay, sheet 2 dot range. I'll just paste it to copy to A1. Okay, now Control C. Now if I go, it's been copied to A1. Okay, so I think we have had enough examples. All right. So obviously there's more to it than what you're seeing here, but these are the most important ones, right? For you to understand. Okay. So the next lecture, we will explore more on on how to reference workbook, worksheets, etc. Okay. I'll see you then.